Hello and welcome to this video. My name is Kylie Enkelmann. I am an energy healer, an intuitive business owner, and I'm also the creator of the Soul Parent Fertility Program. Now today we're going to be talking about loss on your fertility journey. And if you are watching this video, then I'm going to assume that you are looking for some conversation around this topic. If you're not feeling okay, best to do something to take care of yourself. And obviously we're going to be discussing some painful subject matter that might bring up emotions for you. So please viewer discretion as we have this conversation, which is obviously a difficult conversation to have. And part of the reason why it is so difficult is because we don't talk about loss or grief in our culture very often. And so what I want to do is be a safe place for you to come and have a conversation wherever you are, whatever you've been through. My intention with this video and creating this video is to let you know that you're not alone, and to have a way of navigating the emotions and the grief process when you are going through loss on the fertility journey. So the first thing I want to say is that it's actually loss in your fertility journey is a very common experience by many women. The statistics are fairly high. I know in Australia there is at least one child lost every day, so in childbirth or in late term pregnancy. So not to say this to scare you or to there's nothing one can do to prepare for that. And if you are going through a similar experience, is to understand that you're not alone. And unfortunately, the stigma of the pain it stops the conversation. And as a culture and as a society, we don't do very well in supporting people who are going through grief or loss. We are not well equipped in terms of emotional intelligence. Our hospitals and our medical staff aren't well equipped with the emotional support, the counseling services, the people who are doing, who are interacting with someone going through a loss, generally just are relying on their own emotional intelligence. They don't actually have that much training in terms of being able to help support you through what you're going through, other than from a medical point of view. And so that can be a very difficult experience. And if you've gone through loss and you've been at a smaller hospital, then you may have even found that there was no follow-up and no care taken, and you wouldn't be alone in that either. And it's heartbreaking, and it shouldn't be that way, but perhaps that's what you've experienced. Now, even if you have had a lot of support, there is still the fact that this is a very painful experience to go through. And just knowing that you're not alone can sometimes offer some support and to help you to speak up, to share your story, because you'll probably find if you desire to speak about your experience, that other people will be able to will actually feel free to share that they also went through something similar, or their own version, or that they know someone who did, and just not feel like so isolated in what you're going through. Now, if you are going through loss in your fertility journey, then the first thing I would strongly suggest is to support your physiology. So when we're experiencing loss, there can be a very strong sense of shock and overwhelming emotions. Fear and panic and extreme overwhelm. And it is a traumatic experience. There's nothing, you can't be described in any other way, especially if you've been on a fertility journey for a long time, or you're very late term, or it doesn't really matter when it happens. If that if you had a very desired pregnancy, then you're going to be experiencing a sense of loss and sadness. So the first thing is to really support your physiology, and that would mean asking for help and asking to be supported in the way that just checking in with yourself. What do you need at this time? Might be taking some time off work. It might be cancelling your social engagements. It might be asking someone close to you to handle conversations with friends and family so that you're not having to answer those questions yourself. There's a lot of excitement around pregnancy and babies, and it's a very public experience. And so to have a loss after celebrating your pregnancy and different milestones along, it can be very heartbreaking to do that. And so really creating some distance and a buffer zone between yourself and the world is really important at this time. So then we also want to support your physiology in terms of your nervous system. And so doing things like having a bath if you can, like maybe massage, lots of touch, hugs, cuddles, might be going for walks in nature, like being in nature, just really taking the pressure off of your body, off of your mind and your body and your spirit, because when you're going through an experience like this, your body is in a state of shock. So really taking time to reassure your body that you're safe, taking deep breaths, taking slow deep breaths in and out is really important. You might like to wrap yourself up into fluffy blankets and rest. Rest is so important, because when you're in shock, your body needs to rest, because it's just it's a physiological process as much as an emotional process. So give yourself the time and opportunity to rest, to be gentle with yourself, to be in nature if you can. Just minimize how much media, be very careful on what media you're consuming, and just have a bit of a buffer zone between you and the world. I also wanted to talk about the 5 stages of grieving. So the first step is denial, where we are avoiding our feelings. And you might notice you're in denial because people will say, oh, you're doing really well. You're doing really well. And then the waves may start coming up. If you feel like you're in that space of shock or you're a bit numb, then you're probably in this stage. The second stage is anger. And this is can be anger at God, can be anger at yourself, anger at your body, anger at the medical professionals, can be anger at life, anger at the people who have the babies that you so desperately desire. The third stage is bargaining. So it's kind of like if this then that, making promises with God, making promises with the universe to try and escape this pain. The fourth stage is depression, and it can be, you can feel like you are very flat and very low, and it might be very difficult for you to be around other people. You might notice that you're isolating yourself, and you just can't imagine ever being happy again. That you'll know that you're in the stage of depression. The fifth stage is acceptance. Really, this stage of acceptance is just appreciating that this experience has happened and that you're now moving through. Now, when you're navigating grief, what you may find is that the people around you don't know how to hold space for you, and they might not know how to say the right thing. They want to be there for you, but they don't know how, because we don't have the skillfulness to be able to do this. And so, and that's why you might be tempted to withdraw or isolate, and to be alone, so that you're not confronting people's attempts at making you feel better, whilst at the same time making you feel worse. And so this is where it can be helpful to have professional support through a counselor, a psychotherapist, it might be an energetic therapist, it might be a combination of all of these. And it really understand that no one can really appreciate how you feel, because it's impossible to prepare for the loss that you're experiencing, and it's impossible to put themselves in your shoes. And so we just don't, as a society, we don't have the general emotional intelligence to be there for another when someone is experiencing a lot of grief, a lot of loss. The other thing that you may notice is that people expect you to move along or seem surprised that you're still struggling when you're navigating your journey of grief. And grief is, like a rolling wave. It comes in and it comes out, and you never know when it's going to strike you. And it never really goes away, although the size of the wave may become smaller and less intense over time. So that's why it's really important to have people in your life who can hold you and who understand this process of grief, so that you can navigate the rest of your life with people who really don't have the competency and the skills to be able to do that. Now, I want to talk about a few things that we can do from a spiritual perspective, because my whole life purpose is really around spirituality, conscious development, consciousness. And so, as someone who has been on their own fertility journey, this is what supported me. So if you are very much not interested in spirituality, then you might not get any value out of the next part of this conversation, but perhaps you might. So the first thing is really not to take it personally. Now, the first thing that we want to know when something like this happens is why. Why did this happen? Why? And that's a question that is pretty much unanswerable. For the most part, it is unanswerable. Really going over and obsessing over every little thing that you did that maybe led to it, or might have contributed to it, or things that you didn't listen, or what you could have done more. And so if you're experiencing guilt, again, just know this is part of the way that our human psyches process grief and loss. If you find yourself in that process of feeling guilt and obsessing about all the things that you could have done or should have done or you did do, just understand that this is just part of the process of processing grief. This is just part of processing grief. It's integrating it. Don't let yourself get too stuck there. It's just like, oh, this is my psyche trying to understand why this had happened and how can I avoid this ever happening again? Because if there's a lesson to be learned, I want to make sure that I get it. And so rather than obsessing about why did this happen and torturing ourselves with the fact that we don't know, is to surrender to the truth that every soul has their own journey. And whether that soul is incarnated in terms of partial pregnancy, or full pregnancy, or a short early childhood, that soul chose that incarnation, that the soul of your child chose for that incarnation. And sometimes it can be very, very helpful to just trust in the unknown. Just trust in the perfection of the divine design. Now, that might be a difficult thing to accept at this time, but it can also be quite liberating, because it's not something that you can do too much about, and it's not in your hands. It's in the hands of the greater divine design. And so what we can do with that is just to keep surrendering. Process the grief, understand and acknowledge the grief and the upset, and surrender. It's actually about coming to a place of acceptance. Now, obviously, we can't fast forward through the stages of the grieving process, but ultimately, where we will come to is just an acceptance that this has happened. It has happened. It's not about that it was the most perfect thing, or we're not trying to spiritual bypass anything. It's just that it has happened, and just to be in the presence of that. And don't let your mind come into making it mean anything about you being punished, or about life not being fair, or that, you know, it can be quite common to feel angry at God or at life, to find it difficult to be happy for people who have their children in their hands, you know, and that's normal. That's normal. That's a normal part of grieving. Now, I also wanted to share a book with you. It's called Spirit Babies. It might be around the wrong way. Spirit Babies, How to Communicate with the Child You're Meant to Have, by Walter Mackichan. Now, if you haven't read that, this is really the only book on spiritual fertility that I recommend. There are a lot written, but that's the one that I recommend, because I've had, in my fertility coaching work as well as in my own experience, it most aligns with what is written in this book. And so, as Walter talks about in this book, there can be lots of different reasons why a soul will incarnate and only come through part of the pregnancy, the gestation process, or may not survive the childbirthing process. And it's actually because the soul themselves is deselecting from incarnating at this time. There'll be reasons why they might choose to come through for only that partial time. And the truth of the matter is that some of the souls who you have made soul contracts to be there, to parent, to bring through, to birth in this incarnation, are so sensitive, and they need so much encouragement in order to come through that. And then when they come into the astral field of the planet, it feels too much, it feels too overwhelming for them, and they deselect from the incarnation. Sometimes the process of actually coming into the body is too demanding on the soul coming in, because it's, you know, they're going from the soul realm into the 3D physical world. And so this in itself is it's a big journey for them. You know, it's actually the journey coming into the physical and leaving the physical are both very large journeys. And so we want to be really compassionate. Okay, that is pretty much what I want to speak about today. I do have some resources available for free inside my free Facebook group, the Soul Parent Group. It's SOULPARENT on Facebook, and I'll pop the link for that below this video. There's some guided meditations in there and some resources, and I add resources to there over time. So if you would like some more support, you can connect with me in that group. Otherwise, I'll also put a link below this video for my website where you can send me a message. Beautiful soul, if you are currently experiencing grief and loss in your fertility journey, my heart goes to you, and I pray that this is an opportunity for you to tap into the source of great love within you, and that this video is helping you to navigate what you're going through, and to remind you that you will make it through this. You will be happy again, you will laugh again, you will smile again, you will have joy again, and to not stop when things are dark. This is not a time for stopping. This is a time for healing, recuperation, and to hold on to the sparks of lights that you have, the spark of light that you have within you, the spark of light and love that you have in your heart, to not stop. Okay, big love. Bye.